And so my main objective is to try to clean up all the water in the country.
Welcome to Nature Magic. Today we can announce after a long and tricky planning process that Burren Nature Sanctuary have teamed up with a Belgian company, Slow Cabins, to provide on-site eco-accommodation. Check out slowcabins.ie. The cabins are completely off-grid with solar panels on the roof providing electricity. They're beautifully designed with the sole aim of allowing people to escape into nature and relax. In this episode, I'm talking to Féidhlim Harty, who has been working on the project through planning, design, and now into the build stage for the Willow Bed Greywater system. Féidhlim is an environmental consultant and writer. His company, FH Wetland Systems, established in 1996, offers designs and guidance on waterway repair and rewilding, eco-friendly wastewater treatment, and holistic land use management for catchment protection and regeneration. His recent books include Towards Zero Waste and Permaculture Guide to Reed Beds. Hi, Féidhlim. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. You're looking great there in a little shed out in your field. So can you tell...
Good to be here.
Can you tell everyone where we are talking to you from today?
Okay, I am talking to you from the goat shed on our at our new house, because the goat shed this morning seems to be where there's the best reception. And that's where we seem to be fitting in. Out near the Hinch, about 4 miles from the Hinch, somewhere between the Hinch and Estymon, Kilshanny and the Scanner, that kind of area.
Okay, perfect. So in County Clare. Yes, so I've got to know Féidhlim over the last, it's kind of year really. We've been working on a project together at the Burren Nature Sanctuary, which we are now allowed to announce for the first time. So we have teamed up with Slow Cabins for eco accommodation at the Burren Nature Sanctuary. And Féidhlim has been working on the wastewater systems for the cabins because they are completely off-grid, which is a first for County Galway anyway. And I'm not sure about the rest of Ireland, but it's very difficult to persuade the planners that you actually don't need to be connected to the systems. So maybe you could just tell us about that first, and then we'll talk about all the other exciting things you do with your wetland systems.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. Lovely to be here. Let me see. Well, the Slow Cabins project is great, actually. It's a Belgian company, I understand, and Matthew Parkinson is heading that up. And he was really clear from the outset that he wanted something really, really eco-friendly for the site. So they're using dry toilets, compost toilets, which they also use in Belgium, and where they're based. And so we'll be having compost toilets that'll negate the need for any black water. So there's no flush toilets flushing down anything into the sewers. So then we still need to deal with water from showers and wash-hand basins. So that'll all be dealt with a grey water willow filter. So instead of having a standard percolation area, what we've done is designed a system that will allow willows to be planted over that and still not clog the pipes underneath. And so the willows will mop up a lot of the nitrates and a lot of the phosphates, even though they'll be fairly modest in terms of quantity, they'll be mopping those up and mopping up the liquid volume as well. So on the really vulnerable habitat that we have in the Burren, and under your site, Mary, there's going to be really good protection in that web of willow roots that'll extend right the way underneath that percolation area.
So there's literally nothing coming from the toilets. It's just there's a small amount of water for showers and obviously washing in the kitchen. There's a tiny little kitchen involved, so it's just the grey water. I don't know if you could hear in the background, the cuckoo was trying to get onto the podcast. Could you hear that?
Yeah, the cuckoo has been busy.
Yeah, he's in the background there. So I think
what just beside me.
I think one really good thing is now for other people, they can really consider different options now that Galway County Council has passed and given permission for this system, and look into other options for wastewater. So do you want to tell everybody about your business, really, your website, and any other projects that you're working on at the moment?
Sure. Yeah. What I've been doing is working with reed bed systems and constructed wetlands and willow systems since the mid-1990s, and basically trying to find low electricity input or zero electricity input systems that get water really, really clean. So that's the main aim. So my main objective is to try to clean up all the water in the country and then put my feet up. So that's really what I've been moving towards. And in recent years, I've actually been finding that there's suddenly a budget for habitat repair work, for waterway rewilding type work generally. So landscape repair. So working with landowners, with farmers, with county councils, with community groups and individuals to really start to put back in the infrastructure in the landscape that will slow down the flow of water, filter it out, clean it up, and repair the habitats back to what they may once have been. And I'm finding that really exciting work. So it's not dealing with shit in the same way as I have been for 20 years, but it's much more fun, arguably.
Yeah, so it's such a huge problem. I mean, it just was flagged up. Well, flag is a good word, really. Lately, because our blue flag beach trucked, our local beach has lost its blue flag, and everybody is up in arms about it. And there's various different reasons. It seems that the high counts for pollution happen after storm water. And I'm not going to go into the politics of this, but really we're in a very vulnerable system, a karst system where there's vulnerable aquifers underground. And all the water is coming down here from the water catchment area and flooding out into Kinvara Bay. And now there's a big project to do ditches to get the water quicker out into the bay. So we really need the riparian borders of the rivers sorted out with tree planting. So all that work that you're doing is very exciting. Is there any other project that you'd like to talk to us that you're doing now, or something you've done in the past that was very successful?
One of the projects that I've been working with around the country is the EIP projects, the European Innovation Partnership projects, which are generally farm-based, looking at solutions for dealing with things like runoff water and just a general degradation of the natural environment within our wider agricultural landscapes. And the EIP project are looking at those and putting back in buffer zones, silt traps, farm ponds, that sort of thing, both for habitat and also for water flows. One of the problems around the country with Trocht, by the sounds of it, and also here in the Hinch and in other places around the coast, is that when it rains, if there's combined sewers that mix foul sewer and stormwater from roof surfaces, suddenly in heavy rainfall, you get the foul sewer being completely inundated. So you get a lot of water coming in, and you actually get a certain degree of flushing through or bypassing going on, so that you end up with sewage going straight into the receiving water, which obviously is not great. One of the things that they've done to solve that problem in County Mayo, in a village called Kilchima, is they've got a new constructed wetland. Well, it's not all that new. It's about 10 years old. It was planted at about 10 years ago. And so what they've got there is a system where all of the water from the new sewage treatment system goes into the constructed wetland. All of the stormwater, that's the water running off the streets, that all flows into the constructed wetland and gets filtered. But also what's called the storm surge overflow, which is the mixture of stormwater and foul sewer, which traditionally goes straight into a river. That all gets dumped straight into the constructed wetland as well. So you get the wetland providing tertiary treatment of the main sewage, providing filtration of stormwater, and also it's an insurance policy that protects the river against storm surges, where you get sewage being discharged prematurely during a storm event. And that's so easy to do all over the country.
That's such a simple solution, and I'm going to bring it to the attention of our local councillor and everything, as it is a possibility. I was also talking to somebody from Cumbria. Anyway, they're looking after Galway Bay. And it's not even the pollution that's affecting the fish, it's the enormous amount of silt that's been brought out with stormwater events as well. So, the wetlands would catch all that.
Yeah, they would. Constructed wetlands are very, very good at dealing with the food value in sewage, the food value that microbes eat, and also the silt as well. Very, very good silt traps. But even very, very small, modest measures right throughout the landscape can be enormously helpful. So if you've got a farm and you're looking around thinking, well, okay, I don't have any control over the water in the river, but what I can do is I can build small little dams on any drain that's on my farm. So any surface drains that are there, you can dam them to a depth of 6 inches or a foot or something like that, and then move down along the gradient a little bit and build another one, so that when it rains, these all fill up with water and fill the space and allow the liquid time to settle and rest and deposit silt. So it's a really, really simple measure. And if you've got a bit more space, you could even put in a small little pond. Small ponds within drains like that can be enormously helpful as silt traps within the landscape and stops the silt from migrating down towards the sea.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were looking at, trying to persuade farmers up the sort of river system to put in these silt traps. So it could be done really quickly. And actually, when you talk to people, they're all very positive and they want to help. It's just a matter of people don't really know what to do. Talking about it is the first step, which is great. So thanks for coming on the podcast. We have our sewage treatment system at the Burren Nature Sanctuary. So we have an EnviroCare tank, which treats the sewage. And then we have a very, very deep sand filter. And we have willows planted as well. So that's how it's treated here.
Excellent. So you've got a belt and braces system with willows at the end to mop up nitrates and phosphates.
Yes.
Sounds brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. So I was looking at your website and you have written a book as well called Towards Zero Waste. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Towards Zero Waste is book number 4. So it's I always wanted to be a writer, and I find myself writing about shit and waste. And this is the waste side of things. The two of the other ones are looking at eco-friendly sewage treatment. But Towards Zero Waste was that was written. It was actually kind of it's a 10-year upgrade of the first book that I wrote, which was called Get Rid of Your Bin. My aim was to subvert the government's incineration policy by denying them any fuel for their incinerators. And it didn't quite work out like that, but it did get the first book written and out there. And people who like it love it, which is fantastic. The idea is that if we can simply just minimize the amount of rubbish that we take into our homes, then you basically don't need a bin collection. You cut way back on your rubbish, and the resource use that goes hand in hand with that. One of the huge problems on the planet at the moment is we're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction that the planet has seen. So we're in the middle of that event at the moment as a result directly of human activity. And one of the issues is just gobbling up habitats everywhere and basically converting those into raw materials. And so there's two sides Towards Zero Waste. One is to stop producing waste, but the other is to stop wasting all of those habitats by just mucking them up and mining them or logging them or digging them out or cutting them up or whatever it is. That there's a huge amount that can be done by creating closed loop systems. So you've all heard of the circular economy, and in order to move forward into a future that'll be worth living in, the circular economy is crucial, to that process. And one of the things that I find slightly frustrating, I suppose, as I look at the circular economy, is that there's relatively little discussion about the whole area of fossil fuels. That you can't have a circular economy if it's built on the foundation of fossil fuels, because you're taking the fossil fuels out of the ground, processing them and using them, and they're gone. So by definition, it really doesn't work. So a circular economy also essentially has to be a local economy. And I think that if we, to the degree that we throw stuff away, we deprive ourselves of the rich quantity of resources that are already there, that are just being dumped rather than reused. And I'm in the middle of a building project at the moment. We're renovating a house and we're about to move into it. And I'm finding that I'm coming in any interaction with tradesmen, I get such strange looks over and over and over and over again, because my my desire to try to reuse materials looks completely daft. And yet, if you consider the amount of energy and resources that goes into making those materials, we've got a situation where we're just using that energy because it's phenomenally cheap, because fossil fuels are subsidized. We have global subsidies for the fossil fuel industry of $5.2 trillion per annum. There's huge subsidies, both direct and indirect, for the fossil fuel industry. And I think that waste would just, it would simply cease to be an issue if we pulled the plug on that funding mechanism. Taxpayers' money going into propping up some of the richest businesses on the planet. Yeah,
it's an enormous
and
problem that could be changed if people could see things from a different angle.
And I think it is changing. I think it is changing as well. Like there's increasing lack of patience for plastic, for example. And of course, one of the reasons why plastic, which is an incredibly useful material, but one of the reasons why it's so cheap is because the companies are, essentially subsidized to manufacture it, and they don't pay any of the cost of environmental cleanup. So, it's a very, very challenging one, but I think it's changing. I think even in Ireland, we were one of the first countries in the world to bring in the plastic bag tax.
Yeah.
And that's been enormously successful. So small measures like that can make an absolutely huge difference.
Yes. I do sort of feel for you when you have to explain why you spent so many years focusing on shit. Because I remember going in, I was actually worked for Kingspan Envirocare, which is sewage treatment in the Celtic Tiger. And I was going around to engineers, setting up their planning systems. But when I went to the interview, the guy said, "And why do you want to work in this area?"
Yeah.
And I had to quickly think. And I said, well, I've always had an interest in pollution control. But it has to be addressed. And what you're doing here at Burren Nature Sanctuary and then the different projects that you're doing is addressing it head on. And it's also, they're lovely projects. So we'll point everyone towards your website and your books, and I'll put them in the show notes. Is there anything you'd like to say to people before you close? And also, point us in the direction of your website and how people can contact you.
Okay. Well, one thing is that I think by introducing really simple measures within the landscape, I think that enormous changes can be enacted. I think that's something that we need to look at as we go forward into the future. Yeah, if you've got a problem with storm surge events in a town or a village, it can sometimes be challenging if the village is close to the sea. But invariably there's space somewhere around, so if there's roof water coming in, you can route that. Instead of routing it straight into the storm sewers, you can route it into ponds, particularly percolating ponds that allow the water to soak out of the base. So they're empty for the next time that there's a storm surge. And then further back, if you go to a housing estate, set further back from the sea, all the stormwater from that housing estate should be captured, filtered through an unlined wetland so that it soaks into the ground. And this is the stormwater from the roof surfaces and the driveways, not the sewage. But the trick is to get the stormwater out of the main sewers so that during heavy rainfall, there's just no issue because there's no rainfall getting into the sewers.
Absolutely.
And so there's lots and lots of things that can be done, even things like rolling out green roofs or putting in, I know that in one German city, they basically paid people a dividend, or they gave them a discount on their wastewater disposal charges if they simply put a barrel with a hole in it, underneath a gutter. So that instead of connecting their rainwater into a storm sewer, so that when it rained, the barrel filled with water, and then it slowly eased out into the ground afterwards and just soaked away. So it's really simple measures. And by not having these measures, you get rainfall and you get your foul sewer getting flushed through.
Yeah. And you have a vast problem.
Yeah, huge problem.
Yeah,
huge problem. And the solutions are just so simple. Yeah, if you've got a problem with storm surge events in a town or a village, it can sometimes be challenging if the village is close to the sea. But invariably there's space somewhere around. So if there's roof water coming in, you can route that. Instead of routing it straight into the storm sewers, you can route it into ponds, particularly percolating ponds that allow the water to soak out of the base. So they're empty for the next time that there's a storm surge. And then further back, if you go to a housing estate, set further back from the sea, all the stormwater from that housing estate should be captured, filtered through an unlined wetland so that it soaks into the ground. And this is the stormwater from the roof surfaces and the driveways, not the sewage. I think that a lot of the flooding issue that's being put down to climate change is actually in some measure due to land use changes. And so by draining land and developing land, we speed up the water flowing off the land. And we can simply reverse that. We can completely reverse it by putting in hedgerows, woodlands, ponds within farms, planting drains, damming them slightly so that we create a small silt traps within the drains themselves. There's loads and loads of small measures that can be done really, really easily and in a very straightforward way. And if anybody wants information on some of those, just email me and I can send out the information resources that I've been developing over the last number of years with the farming groups.
Brilliant. I mean, and think how good that would be for biodiversity, quality of life, even for attracting tourism. It's a win-win all round.
And like you're doing at Slow Cabins, with the Slow Cabins work, if you can have compost toilets, then you're just not mixing perfectly good nitrogen, perfectly good phosphorus, perfectly good biomass and good water and mixing them all together into a soup that can make people sick and cause pollution.
Exactly. So, it's going to take people a while to come around to the compost toilets. So thank you very much for such a positive message. And it has been a pleasure working with you on the Slow Cabins project at Burren Nature Sanctuary.
Thanks a million, Mary. It's been exciting work. It's been fun to do it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Nature Magic. The big news is that 3 slow cabins have arrived in Ireland and will be delivered to Burren Nature Sanctuary next week. We're delighted to partner up with a company so close to our own ethos and feel it is an ideal match for Burren Nature Sanctuary. You can pre-book through slowcabins.ie and there will be a link on our website when booking is open. The cabins are designed for 2 people and offer uninterrupted views of the wildflower meadow and secluded spaces to chill out and relax. So check out slowcabins.ie.